This is Mike Zay with TenantBase. We are doing a series of partner broker interviews with some of our amazing broker partners across the country that focus on tenant rep. Today, we're joined by Matt Watson in Austin, Texas, with Austin Office Space and exclusive tenant rep firm. And Matt has been a partner of ours for going on several years now, and really appreciate him spending some time with us today and sharing his story and kind of what he's seeing in the market. So thanks for
Yeah,
joining.
yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. And like you said, been a partner with TenantBase for I think maybe 4 or 5 years, and it's gone
Yeah,
really well so far. And excited to keep the going with the platform and the team with TenantBase. So looking forward to having a quick talk about my experience and history and all that good stuff,
love it.
and seeing how I might be able to maybe help other people with some of the ideas I have and other things that might be beneficial to them.
Perfect. Well, one of the best parts about what I get to do on a daily basis is getting to build relationships with people like Matt. And it's been a lot of fun to hopefully make an impact on your business and have a kind of mutually beneficial relationship. So, just to start there, I always love hearing this. What led you to get into commercial real estate? How did you get started? Was there a specific intent, or did you find your way here accidentally?
I would say I've been in a number of sales jobs where I had worked by myself, whether that was growing up doing mowing yards when a lot of my other friends were maybe doing other types of jobs where they were working at normal jobs. I was always doing something that had to do with working for myself. That was whether that was mowing yards or raking leaves or cleaning gutters or painting curbs or doing things. I never really had a real job when I grew up. I was always working for myself. So then after I got out of school, I got into a sales job. Actually worked for Ernest and Julio Gallo as part of their sales program. They recruited heavily at University of Oklahoma, which is where I went to school. So it started out there in the wine business with a finance degree of all places. I had planned to get into finance, maybe something to do with stocks or something like that. But as I learned, I didn't want to really be in a finance department anywhere. So that led me to selling or working for a wine distributor,
Okay.
one of the largest in the country. So I did that for a little while in Houston, and then I moved on from that. Decided that I wanted to do something else. Ended up in Austin. Was here trying to figure out my next path, and was looking at different things that had to do with like an outside sales type job. So was looking at pharmaceutical type sales, medical sales, things like that. And I had a friend that worked at Trammell Crow in Oklahoma City, and he
Mhm.
was one of the brighter people that I knew out of college and growing up. And he worked as a broker in Oklahoma City and was doing really well there.
Okay.
And I just thought, hey, that's if he's doing that, then maybe that's a good path to follow. And and that's kind of what led me into it. Because I wanted to stay in a sales type, you know, sales type environment, but ultimately is a little bit of just you know following maybe hit the path that person that we took that was a friend of mine in Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I'm sure we all have friends like that where it's like, hey, if they're doing this, it's got me.
Yeah,
So who
yeah,
was
he's still doing it, and he's done extremely well, probably as well as anybody I can think of offhand. So
amazing?
um,
Who
he's
was
gone down a couple.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
He's gone down a couple of different paths. He went more in the development side. At first, he was doing brokerage, and then he went into development, asset management development. He works for a private equity firm
Nice.
at this point.
Very cool. So who was that first role with? Who did you join and what did that look
Yeah,
like?
yeah, good question. So I worked with Equis. They were acquired, you know, this was 25 years ago. So I've been in business 25 years since 2000. So over 25 years ago, I started with a company called Equis. They were acquired by Cushman Wakefield,
Mhm.
uh, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. But they were a huge, not huge, but they were a big tenant rep firm around the country.
Yeah. And so did you the next thing that I was curious is how did you find your way into just doing the tenant rep focused? Was that just from day one because you joined Equus and then that was the path you were on? Did that ever
Exactly.
change?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know quite what you know I, you know, I didn't know what path that would take me when I went to Equus. That's what they were doing. They were tenant rep exclusive, and the more I learned, the more I felt like that was the place to be.
Okay. Just you think that's because it just is the most I guess it's more of a relationship sale and you're not selling a tangible product kind of, I mean, you kind of from your background or what drew you to that? I'm just out of curiosity. Once you,
Yeah, I think as hard as it is to get started, I think it's a little easier to work with, whether it's a 500 square foot client or 1,000 or 1,200 or 3,000 square foot warehouse client. Like there are opportunities for young people, young brokers to instantly get their hands on a deal where, if you're, 6 months in the business or 5 months in the business, it's going to be hard to go, you know, uh, you know, con convince an asset manager that you're ready to take over a 200,000 square foot building, or even somebody that's got a 5,000 square foot building that you're the right person for the listing. It's just a little easier to work and get started in the tenant rep side of things.
yeah. Yeah,
And then
well, easy and tenant rep don't normally come into the same conversation too often. So what are some things that have helped you kind of be successful as a tenant rep? Like what are some of the things that have helped you 25 years build, sustain your client relationships, your book of business, and be at a prominent firm, working with great companies?
hmm I know everybody's gonna say this, but it was really a lot of hard work and consistency. I think getting through that first 2 or 3 years was pretty tough. Um, I was pretty determined that I was going to stick with the business when I started it. And then, 2 years into it, it was dicey. I think the first year I was in the business, I made $5,000. It was tough. Second year, you know, made more than that, but not a lot more. It was really pretty tough. And then it was that third year where it started to kind of, take hold.
Okay.
So it was tough at first, but I stuck with it. It was consistency, and that's probably the main thing that would contribute the success I've had to is just staying consistent over 25 years. I mean, um, the office you can see here in the background, I've been at this desk and in this office for 25 years. So, my I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but we've you know, that's just speaks to how consistent it's been. It's besides this chair, a lot of the things, the atmosphere and some of the things I've put into place have been really helpful of just staying consistent.
So do you use to do that? And I mean, that's probably one of the perseverance, consistency, uh,
hmm
not taking your chips off the table. If you're going to be in this industry, because it does take a long time. And I guess I'm lucky because I get to watch from the sidelines now and root for people instead of being in the thick of it, which we know is a constant struggle and battle.
Yeah.
What do you use? Are there things you use to help position you to stay consistent? I guess what I mean by that is like CRMs, processes you put in place. Um, just do you go to the same meetings every week for networking or whatever that might be? I guess anything there that's kind of just part of your routine that you rely on to kind of be able to stay consistent and check those boxes because that's adding.
hmm Well, back before CRMs, which are relatively new, maybe 10 or 15 years. I mean, they now there's hundreds of them.
Mhm.
You know, I have printed out things and have had books of like every person I've talked to, and it's just
Yeah.
where you turn the page and it's whether it's a lead or some notes, and have gone through, used to print out every time I talk with somebody, I'd print out the notes, and this is kind of before CRMs were, but and that was kind of what I'd work on and say, hey, these are the 200 people that are I've had active conversations with over the last couple of years. I'm going to work through these lists, and it is as I've moved on and have stayed busy. Yeah, there's certain things whenever things get slow, there's different little things that I can fall back on. HubSpot has been a pretty good thing for me to use as a tool. There's a way where you can find out who is checking your opening emails. That's been a really good tool that I've been using for about 10 years now.
Yep.
Um, especially when you're working tenant rep and you send somebody a search and if they didn't open it, it's telling because they are not interested. And if you keep sending them emails, it's telling because they're not interested. If you send them a search or a survey and they they're opening it and they're opening it two or three times, they're forwarding it on. There's some of these tools that allow you to see you know um, what time they're opening it, what time, if they've looked at it, if they've forwarded it on. That's been a helpful tool. I kind of have farmed that because people that I'd sent information to 2 months ago, maybe even 8 months ago, all
Yeah.
of a sudden they'll pop up, and you got to. Sometimes you don't want to call them right away. They'll think, what am I being stalked here? But it's been HubSpot has that as a tool where you can see who's opening emails, and I think for tenant rep that's real important, um, because it gives you insight as to who's interested.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking about that, and you're going from printing things out to keeping track of clients to now in the world we live in today, everything's, you know, instantaneous, and you're tracking all this different stuff, and you're having conversations that happened a year ago or 6 months ago. That there you go.
Yeah, I've got the book here of the list that I used to go through. As you'll see, it's kind of thick, but that's I have two or three of these,
And
and
yeah,
different little things that I don't think new people would use that. They'd be sticking things into a CRM,
yeah,
but some of that information that I just showed you is 15, 20 years old.
totally. And like I guess the point of all of it was to build a relationship, to build rapport, and then, provide great service. And
Hmm.
so I guess the question I'd have is what, as you're staying in touch with these people, however you're
Hmm.
doing, right? You that call 6 months ago, if it's not actionable, we got to get into the market today. You're staying in front of them. Are there things that are you just trying to have conversations to stay top of mind, or are there things you're sending kind of routinely that are packaged? Are you sending market reports? Other kind of like digital or print assets. I mean, what do those calls look like if you were calling me after 8 months or something like that?
Yeah. Well, so we've used constant contact. This is 25 years ago again, so a lot of the tools they didn't have then. But when I first got in the business, everybody I talked to, I would put them in a in a database and would put together my own um, newsletter
Okay.
that I formed on my own, and it'd probably be embarrassing to look at it right now. It was not interactive. It was something in a Word document, and this was in 2000. So people were still faxing then. So it sounds dinosaur type marketing right now, but it was something where I'd have a newsletter that go out to 300 people that grew to 1,200, and then it eventually grew to 1,500. And yeah, that was something we ended up using through Constant Contact and sending out a monthly newsletter
So you,
quarterly. It turned into a quarterly newsletter.
so you're still doing that today?
Yes, we still do that. It's tough to compete with some of, sometimes the marketing materials with some of the bigger firms are
Mhm.
so glossy that we've learned we've got to outsource it to compete with the bigger firms. So we've been on a little bit of a 2-year hiatus without a newsletter. So
Okay.
we're going to try to get back to that. But
I,
you know,
I appreciate you sharing that, because like I think a lot of brokers would be in your shoes that will hopefully listen to this, and they'd say, well, I don't have a marketing department. I don't have
hmm
department. I mean, we work with a lot of independent firms across the country and a lot of independent brokers. And so, I guess that leads to kind of the second part of that question. So, like today, without that newsletter, without that glossy marketing material, you're trying to stay top of mind and compete. Are you really just relying on your ability in conversation and kind of learning about the client and your market knowledge to do that, or are there other things you've kind of been able to come up with over the years?
yeah, there's little tools that we use. I mean, to try to stay in front of anybody with something relevant. What I've learned is that just an email saying, "Hey, how you doing?
Okay.
How are things going?" does no good.
Yep.
It might even be a negative. If you're not bringing any value to an email conversation, it's just a delete, and they may see as just, "Hey, this guy's just he's not, what's the point?" So if there's a new transaction that's happening in somebody's building, we might send them a flyer and say, hey, want to let you know what's happening in your building. This tenant's getting ready to take is moving in. Here's the 2000 October 2025 marketing flyer for your building. Want to let you see what's available, what's around you. I know you don't plan on moving
Sure.
anytime soon. Hope you're happy, but just want to let you know what's going on in your building. Parking lot might start looking a little more full. Just try to add some sort of relevant, like something relevant to a conversation to contact them.
Yeah.
And that's a good way, is just to let them know what's happening in their building.
Yeah.
Um, and outside that, if there's an interesting article, you find something about somebody's company or their industry, maybe let them know. But a real easy way to stay in touch with people and customers and clients is just every quarter or every, biannually, sending them a marketing flyer with, hey, this is what's happening in your building. That way, if
Yep.
they're thinking about it, an expansion or something, um, they'll let you know. Or or if they're not, it's still interested in relative. They're I'm sure they're curious as who my neighbors are, what's going on, who's moving out. So it's a good way to keep in touch with people, and those marketing flyers are easy to get. So
Yeah.
that's been a good tool. As far as and that this might be going off topic, but as far as like how we work with a client, and how do we when we initially are introduced to a group and start working with them,
Mm.
everybody's got to be mindful of their time. We do an initial survey. Um, we found that the CoStar reports are pretty lame. They're not very compelling. So a lot of times what we do is we'll gather the marketing flyers, put them together, send them over to a client, and then with a spreadsheet. Sometimes the spreadsheet's interactive, where
Yeah.
you click on the link and it'll go directly to the flyer. But just in terms of like speed and getting information to people, we like to get them marketing flyers. And then the first time we meet with somebody, if there's much upside at all, if they're a 5,000 square foot tenant, or if they say, hey, we're looking for long-term lease, or if they're 5,000, 10,000 square foot warehouse user. I mean, we show up to the initial meeting with a bound survey,
Yeah.
that we a lot of times we create at FedEx, just because it looks professional,
Yeah.
and
So
we
you had
hand
to
it to them. Yeah,
go through.
I've got some examples in my office, but we'll hand that to them, and they're like, um, you know, hey, we just met, and you're giving me a full market survey that has their logo on it, our logo on it. It has all the properties. It's bound. It looks like something that somebody spent some time on, and we do spend time on it. I think as soon as people see that, that's pretty impactful in terms of they're like, well, I didn't know I had a broker, but apparently I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
You're kind of you're showing them, how you work from minute one, right? You're
yeah.
kind of that. No, that's really good. So as you've gone along, in the process with the broker's, career, I guess what are some things that you've had to work on? None of us come to what we're doing, perfect from day one or masters of it from day one. Were there some things that you kind of had to really sharpen your skill set, you know, professional development wise, or in the brokerage field, just in general, that
Hmm.
really work on to improve? And then how did you do that if you did?
Yeah. You know, I, you know, when we first got in the business, I was 25, so age was kind of working, against us. So, we had to play a part that we
Yeah.
were, had a bigger vocabulary than we might have had, or had, you know, we're trying to play the part of maybe, you know, we were a small firm, and I don't think anybody in our company was over 25 years old. So, there were five of us, and we were all pretty young. Um, so age kind of worked against us. We had to kind of, play the part of an older, more experienced brokerage firm to be more successful. But now, if anything, we're getting older, and we're, you know, age is going to start counting against us here pretty soon. So, I'm not really sure that helps touch on that point, but, like like what have we done to kind of, sharpen our tools, or what, you know, I'm trying to think of a good answer for that, and
Let
being
me
more professional and sharpen our sharpen our marketing tools and our deliverables and our emails and our email signatures and our logo, business cards, certain things along the way. We kept our office nice, you know.
So that's interesting. So the young group coming up, um,
Mhm.
and that was the whole firm when you guys started was all under 30. It sounds like around 25.
Yeah, so there were four of us and we were 20, we were 24, 24, 25, 20, four of us were under 25 years old.
So I mean that's a challenging place to be. I mean, there's a lot
Hmm.
of energy in that room, right? But especially in this business, it's the gray hair helps a lot.
Yeah, no,
And
yeah.
so what I mean that we work with a ton of young brokers across the country. Um, what would you say? I mean, some of them are big firms, some of them are at smaller firms. What would you say to them? Like, how did you guys, even without like the mentorship, how did you guys go find clients? What was that like? I guess give me the rundown there. That's fascinating.
Hmm. So, we tried everything. We had an advertisement in the phone book,
Okay.
in yellow pages. So a lot of the stuff ages us quite a bit. But we had that. We had the newsletter. We were walking buildings. We were reading the Austin Business Journal, looking for leads there. We were sending out, congratulation notes to people we'd see that got new positions in the Business Journal. Um, and then, we had a lot of hooks in the water. We had back then we had some other referral partners called Austin offices. There's one called Square Foot. These are all out of business now, but they were tenant. They might have had the same um, mindset as TenantBase somewhat, but this was a long time ago. But we've always had some different referral partners that we've worked with, and a lot of them are they're no longer around. But we would get leads from those groups. We've always been a part of um, actively marketing, our company on Google. Company's austinofficespace.com. So, we show up, pretty high naturally in some of the searches. We used to find, you know, a long time ago that they couldn't find information. They were looking, they'd literally drive around the weekend and look at and call on signs.
Yeah.
And I don't think people do that now, but they would call on signs and then they'd get online. This was when Google was just first getting started, and they'd find us and would request help. And if we wouldn't get back to them 3 or 4 days, they'd call us and say, "Hey, we're still waiting on the information." Well, times have changed now. People don't get in their car. Nobody's calling on signs. They're getting online, and they're looking. Um, and so, but there's a lot of competition in the market for companies that are marketing their firms online.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of information online
That's certainly changed. I'd say people have definitely leveled up. The average brokerage firm has leveled up their digital presence significantly over the
now.
last
Hmm.
15 years, which is kind of table. I guess that's kind of puts table stakes now. You kind of have to be there, with all the different platforms. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really cool because I mean, if you're listening to this now, you might say, oh, go get online leads for commercial real estate or put yourself out there digitally. Of course you do that. Well, again, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that really wasn't much of a thing. I mean, I remember 42 floors coming out. I don't know if you ever worked with them, but that was like 2012. And that was, I think they were mainly in San Francisco, but, that's only been 13 years. And there's been a whole
Hmm.
cycle between, then and
Yeah.
now of what's happened in the industry. And so, those are things kind of on the cutting edge. And now it's probably AI in a lot of ways. So are you guys, experimenting with AI in any way in your broker business development stuff or anything like that that you're kind of curious about these days, or relying on partners, which is kind of what we do a lot.
We're really not. We're not. Obviously everybody's getting calls and emails and solicitations from everybody saying, "Hey, do you want business? We can get it this way." And I'm like, I don't know. I'm sure that it's something we're gonna have to be aware of. Might be leaning on you guys to say, "Hey, this is where the wave is," and see somebody do it first.
Yeah.
But we have been solicited by a few companies that are saying, "Hey, we can get you qualified leads, and it's AI based." And I'm a little bit skeptical at this point. I haven't seen AI step into our role quite as much to where I think that they can do a better job than we can or tenant base to find, good leads.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to play a part. I mean, I would say that our clients and our partners should be looking to us as, hey, can you guys push that boundary for us, right? And can you kind of be on the cutting edge of that? And then also we have partnerships that I'd say the same thing to them. It's like, hey, we're relying on you to help us, be a better version of that. So, I mean, I think as a young broker, I think you're right. I mean, especially on your own, where you guys were, you got to go try everything and get out there and hustle, and obviously you guys made it work, and that's pretty incredible. What do you see kind of, going from here? Like now you guys are, established, you've been in business, the market you're in has gone through a lot of growth. What do you see in the next year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever you want to talk to, just on the market, whether it's Austin specific or kind of the space types you guys focus on in office and industrial, kind of what do you think, you know, your clients should be focused on, and kind of what are you thinking is going to be the outlook here?
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. We focus really on Austin. We don't have national accounts. I do an occasional deal in San Antonio or Dallas, but 99% of what our firm does is right here in Austin, the Austin area. So, I think what we're going to see over the next three to maybe 2 to 3, 4, 5 years is probably a little bit of what we've seen in the last couple years. It's just trying to piece things together in probably the smaller size range.
Okay.
That's at least what we're seeing. We have some subleases that are 10,000 square feet, some that are 15, a couple that are 8, 9, 10. And I mean, we are not having any activity. They're well marketed. We've got them, we use all of the tools that we normally do. Have Matter advertise on LoopNet. We've got Broker Blast. We're using all those tools, and there's just nobody looking at these larger spaces.
And those
You
are
know,
office. Those are office.
those are office deals.
Okay.
So we are, my business has shifted. I'm probably doing, you know, just by nature of going where the opportunity is, probably 60 to 70% warehouse flex.
Okay.
hmm So we're just going to continue to follow that. I'm really, I've gotten more and more knowledgeable of every little nook and cranny that's got 5,000 square feet with a yard and all the spaces around town in certain areas where, Samsung is moving to, just be knowledgeable about where that is. Cause I think that's where the business is, at least for us is, we're not expecting, a 10,000 square foot client to come out of nowhere at
Yeah.
this point. It just doesn't, it's not happening these days. We do have, been as we've been doing this for 25 years, have got a good book of business.
Yeah.
Um, but that's even, a lot of those companies, either got bought out or dissolved or went to work from home or are in a hybrid mode or something to where, even those companies that we had as clients for many years are not as big as they used to be.
With
So
that
we
space,
concentrate more in that, you know, 2,500 to 6,000 square foot office. And then we love the warehouse deals that are, 5,000 to, 25,000. It's kind of where we're helping out those users in that size.
makes sense. So in that space category, more so on the industrial side, I mean, everybody, that follows the industry, it's an extremely in-demand product type. It's been very tight. Vacancy rates have been very low across the country. How is that looking, Austin? Is finding the right space still the biggest hurdle for these businesses? Is that loosening a little bit? Kind of where does that market exist today? That you know local flex industrial market.
I think we're at an inflection point where there's enough supply to where if you're looking for 10,000 square feet and you need a dock door and a ramp and you need it climate controlled, it's out there now. To where 3 years ago, you might be able to find an option or two, and now you're, in a pretty, and if you're casting a pretty wide net, now you might find 8 to 10 options.
Okay.
So the market has softened up quite a bit to where you can, if you've got a good client, you've got somebody that's has is well put together, you can find them a space. So we're just trying to find the groups.
So different challenges from back, even a couple of years ago for
Mhm.
less inventory. Now you're kind of navigating the options. Are we still seeing, even in that span, if I leased 3 to 5 years ago, uh, in a comparable building and I'm going to market now, is my price point significantly different, um, today or, because there's a little bit of softening, has that changed at all?
I'd say that it's real similar. If you're coming out of a 3 to 5 year, let's put it this way: coming out of 3 years, let's keep it at 3 years. If you're coming out of a 3 year lease in a warehouse or an office, you're coming out. But when we're talking to people, we're saying, "Hey, your lease is coming up in February. It's coming up in March," and they're like, "Okay, not sure what to do." For the most part, I say, "Hey, for the most part, this is good news. Your lease is coming up. There's going to be some free rent. There's going to be an opportunity to repaint, recarpet. There's going to be some incentives, and there's probably going to be the ability to lower the rate. So a lot of times tenants don't even want to face a lease expiration. To them, it seems like they're having to dig back in it, recommit, go back through a process that they don't love doing. But for the most part, it's good news, and it's an opportunity to you know um, reset your rental rate potentially a little lower, but not much, but
Okay.
probably get to, some free rent incentives and maybe some, you know, contributions from the landlord on tenant improvements.
Okay. So you're not getting out of a 3 to 5 year lease in Austin right now and saying, oh, the market's up 30, 40% from where, that's not happening. Because I remember
No.
in certain times it was in Southern California and other places for a span there where it was pretty drastic.
So if you were coming out of a 5 year industrial lease that you signed in 2019 or 2020,
Yeah.
that's where you might find, hey, I was paying, you know, 11, $10 a square foot triple net, and now they want 15. The landlord wants 15. So
Yeah.
if it was a long-term lease that you signed in 2018, 19,
Okay. Yeah.
maybe even in 20, you might find that. But we're seeing a lot of that kind of flush out now that we're 5 years past some of the significant increases, and we're seeing that most of the tenants that are coming up with their leases coming up, we're still about where we were 3 or 4 years ago.
Good to know. And so
Hmm.
one kind of last question to kind of wrap up here, and I appreciate all the time. We, like you mentioned at the beginning, we've been working together for several years. I'm almost curious, and I'm sure we've had the conversation offline, but here, what was your first impression when you started working with TenantBase? What were you thinking you were getting? And then, kind of how is that reconciled with what it's been given your past history with lead generation. Um,
Hmm.
what does that whole journey look like for you?
Yeah, no, that's good stuff, because I can't remember. I think somebody in our company had been approached to, with the tenant-based platform. Um, and they initially had said, we don't want to, we operate in the, like a lot of brokerage firms, everybody's, you eat what you kill, you kind of do your own marketing initiatives. So somebody had brought up tenant base, and I knew that they were in the market, didn't know quite who they were, but somebody in our company had the opportunity to work with you guys, and they passed. I let them have first stab at it. Didn't want to step on their toes because they had said that they had talked to you guys. Um, so it turns out once they had flushed out that it wasn't something they wanted to pursue. I think that's when I connected with you, and I'm glad we have. That was about 4 or 5 years ago. And at first we were on a different, it was a little bit different platform, and um, I think the leads were. It takes a long time for these leads to unfold, so it wasn't quick. And I don't know what it is. Sometimes the tenant-based leads take longer than other potential leads to close. Um, but initially, we it was a little slow, but we did close enough to where it kept us engaged through the process, and it's grown every year since then. I think for 5 years.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
great.
we're now at the we're now at the point where we're closing deals this year, and it's October, that we were introduced to in 2024. So coming up on a year where two deals we're hoping to close by the end of the year were leads from TenantBase from 2024. So it
Yeah.
does take some time.
It does. And, I think in our world, we want everything's when you originate the engagement with a business that's looking for space or trying to just access the market, it feels urgent. It feels like we have to have it now, tomorrow. We
Hmm.
have to be in somewhere. And we've learned the same thing. I mean, these aren't new concepts in business, but long-term relationships, long-term partnerships with brokers like yourself. Um, Learning how to work with each other and getting better at it every year. That's where we've really seen, this take off is, we're really, we view ourselves as, kind of like an outsourced part of your team. We're that extension of your strategy. In the places maybe you're playing a little bit, but we're kind of that extension of your business development strategy and some support to find those new opportunities. And you know, that's really the goal. But yeah, it in this space, it is surprising how long things can take to develop for sure.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
we're definitely so we're patient enough to know that by this point. So we're hopefully looking at things that are tenant bases sending our way right now that might close in late 2026.
yeah, no, that's
So yeah, the things that have been helpful with tenant base have been the dashboard, and helps with Brady's. A lot of times, Brady Evans is our DVR. He's stepped in and it's like, hey, we haven't been able to engage with this group. I've texted them twice, I've emailed them three times.
yep.
I've we've called them, not any assistance, and he's been able to rattle the cage on some deals and get some response. So that's been helpful as well. So we do use the tenant based dashboard. I'm probably on, I got it open right now. It's open every day. Looking through it, seeing, hey, when was that person? When did I reach out to them last? Is there anything that has come onto the market that I can send their direction? So, just farming through. I wish all my deals were on the tenant-based dashboard. The renewals I'm working on, the
Sounds like a
the
product request.
yeah, exactly. Hoping you guys have a different arm that I can integrate my other data into.
Yeah. No, that hopefully in the future we'll be able to. We do get a lot of requests for things like that, and hopefully we'll be able to honor those. So I mean, I know we talked about you've been getting deals, and and I'll let you go here in a second, but I'm kind of curious, from that perspective of whether it's us or something else. It seems like you've always had something working in addition to your efforts that's kind of there, another lead generation platform, whatever it is, things that are on autopilot. I mean,
Hmm.
how important has that been for you? And I guess not just at a high level, but are there years that if you didn't have those things, you know, that you may not be here right now because it was kind of the things in the background that gave you the opportunity that made the year or the quarter or whatever? Because I think that's a good thing for young brokers to be thinking about is you can't be all things to all people, but you've got to have systems and like you talked about that consistency working for you. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, it does. I mean, we have so many hooks in the water. I mean, at one point we've had, like I said, many different referral partners. We've had Yellow Book, we've had newsletter, we've had cold call. We used to walk buildings. We've had an intern that's made. We've had a lot of hooks in the water. So you got to have you know jug lines, if you want to call it, just a lot of hooks that are in the water. Including some outbound calling, which I've gotten away from over the last 5-6 years. It's just
Yeah.
too time consuming, and I've been doing this long enough to where I don't lean on that, but I try to reach out to current clients, take them to lunch, keep in touch with them that way. Um, but you know, trying to go back to the question that was at hand to try to um,
Yeah, I mean, can you think of a moment where you just were sitting there and saying, "Man, if I didn't have this one." big opportunity that came through, that changed the trajectory, of a year or whatever. I mean, I'm sure you've
Yeah.
heard a number of times.
Yeah. Well, I think, so one thing to being consistent helps with is it keeps you involved. You always have you always have your jersey on. You're always ready to go. So whether you come in and you're like, I'm working on 1,000 square foot deal, this is not what I should be working on. At least you're engaged in the process. You're in front of your computer. You're making a call. You're not getting stale. Because I think I've seen and heard of a lot of brokers. They if they're not working on something that's a 5,000 square foot deal, then they just don't want to work on it. Then they go on vacation, then they get disengaged, and next thing you know, they've taken the whole summer off, and then they come back and they don't know what's going on. They don't know what the market is. I think you got to stay engaged, and that means if you're working on a marketing a sublease space or working on 1,000 square foot deal, at least you're still in the process and engaged with the market. But going back to a deal where would I be sitting here, if it would things be different if it wasn't? I think when I was in the third year of the business, I'd made, the $5,000 first year, probably, four times that the second year, which is not much. But the third year, I had a mortgage group that had grown to like 10 or 12,000 square feet. Was a cold call that I'd made when I originally got in the business. And I think that deal was, and that was in 2001 dollars or 2002. I think it was a $50,000 deal.
Yeah.
And that kind of righted the ship where I was able to, kind of get the monkey off my back,
Yeah.
pay off some of the debts I had. So I look back at that as one of the bigger ones.
No, that's
And
awesome.
and then at that point, I felt more confident, was able to kind of move forward. So it was a 10,000 square foot mortgage company in 2003. That was my third year in the business, and after that, it really turned the corner and haven't looked back since then.
That's amazing. Well, that's so cool. And no, I love that advice that came out there. Just it's something that I always tell our team is activity begets activity, right? If you're
Hmm.
staying active and you're hustling, it tends to create good things. You got to be smart about it. You got to check yourself, but those things really add up over time. And so I really love the themes of kind of your career and kind of what you've done of just being consistent, staying active with it, and just staying disciplined. And it pays off. Really
Yeah, I
does.
got a funny story. So we have a little small building, and I got three kids as well. But so when COVID hit, I think I took my wife tried to set me up something in the home in the house, and it was like in our closet, which is kind of big, so it was okay. The internet was a little spotty, and it was got a little stuffy back there. But I found myself coming up to my office, and there was three cars here. We've got the whole building's only 25,000 feet, so it's a small building. But I
Yeah.
would come up here, and it was like still can't staying consistent even right in the middle of COVID. And it was a good even through that time frame, there was a lot of people that were you know taking time off doing that. It was an interesting time, but this was almost a safe haven. There was like two people in the whole building.
Well put. That's well put. Well,
Yep.
thanks for doing this. I hope you enjoyed it, and I think people get a lot of good stuff out of it. Yeah, I mean, I really do appreciate it, Matt. This is awesome. So thank you.